Hello and welcome to week 23 of the FUT Weekly podcast. It's a gameplay episode, which if you're a supporter, you'll be surprised by because this is not normally what comes onto the feed first. Normally it's the content episode. But this week with Road to the Final, that means it makes sense to record a bit later once the Champions League matches are done. So if you are a supporter and going to be getting that content episode this week, look out for it on Thursday. If you're not a supporter, then just search Support FUT Weekly, just £3 a month and double the podcast every week. Right, let's introduce our first guest, who, as it almost always is FUT Legend AirJapes. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you much, Ben. Happy to be back, although I haven't played too much FIFA over the past week. I think sometimes that's maybe nice and maybe okay.
Yeah. Did you get up to anything fun outside of FIFA this last week?
Weather was kind of nice in Chicago this past weekend. We creeped towards the 50s a little bit, and it was sunny, which in February is borderline unheard of. So plenty of time outside with the family. Those are the things that you want to be able to do during the winter and don't often get the chance to.
Yeah, it's funny actually. People think of the weather being quite, suddenly changeable in the UK, but in DC it's pretty bad. On Wednesday it's going to be 9 degrees C, but then that's about 50 Fahrenheit. But then on Thursday, it's going to be 78 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 27 degrees C. So a difference of 18 degrees Celsius in a day is pretty mad. But anyway, that's enough weather chat. I don't think that's what we're here for.
Proper small talk to start off the pod.
Yeah, wasn't particularly expecting it, but Josh, Spreadsheet FIFA, also with us. Any particular take-homes about the weather from you?
No.
Fair enough.
It is about as miserable as you'd expect in Manchester. So I'm no weather person, but it's
no meteorologist.
There we go. Yeah, it's changeable.
Yeah, and we'll have to find out from our next guest if it's similar with him. You'd imagine so. He is someone that's never been on the main feed or supporter episodes, but has been many times, pretty much every time, on the Icon Roundtable. And as that's now become the gameplay workshop, it makes sense to have him jump on the main feed episodes and give a different perspective, I think, although perhaps not on the weather. Welcome to the podcast, Springford. Hello.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. Slightly more rainy here in East London, but that might just be because of West Ham's performances recently, putting a bit of a dampener on my weekend and my last few months, really. So other than that, this is a great opportunity to be here. So I'm focusing on that and not David Moyes' shortcomings.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like it was nice to get you on, anything to distract from the current situation, but you just mentioned it, so, we haven't really distracted from it.
I think address the elephant in the room and then
good idea.
Past it.
Well, we've got, the rest of this podcast to not talk about that and talk about gameplay. The first thing I'd be interested to hear about is, as we often do, player reviews. And actually, Springford, let's come to you first. I'll broaden it out a bit because obviously you haven't been on. If there are any players, they don't have to be more recently released that you'd like to review. Obviously, bonus points if they are a more recent player.
There's a couple I could go for. I've been extremely fortunate with my pack luck recently, and I feel like going for too many of the high tier cards as a review isn't always the most helpful. So I'm going to go for someone that I've been using for a long time since he came out. Hasn't left my team. I've got him up in front of me actually because I wanted to check how he's doing for me. It's the World Cup Diego Forlan. He is absolutely brilliant as a striker. He's played 356 games for me. He's got 406 goals with 223 assists. So his output is crazy as a main striker. And I think the reason he's still relevant is because you've got a lot of these promo cards coming out that still aren't really touching the level of these World Cup heroes. One that I was looking at that is kind of similar but also different with the skills is the new Road to the Final Bobby Firmino. He's got a similar stat setup with slightly higher dribbling and the 5-star skills, but is priced at around 1.7 million at the moment. And I think you can pick up Forlan for about 600k there or thereabouts. And he's just fantastic. He's dribbling to work with it slightly, but not too much with the engine. He's quick when he needs to be, able to hold off players. He's an absolute auto shooter. I think he's got something like 95 shot power, 96 long shots. So it is just a case of just taking a shot whenever you get the angle, and more often than not, because keepers are terrible, it's going in. And he's brilliant for the 𝘬𝘯𝘁𝗍𝘀 as well, because he's helping my 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦 get that chemistry with the hero chem. He is pricey. I mean, 600k isn't cheap for a striker, but compared to some of the other options that are coming out, he's so good for what he offers in terms of the way you can build your squad and what he offers to you in game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think we've talked about him on the podcast particularly.
Yeah, because I know there's been a lot of mentions for the 𝘮𝘀, and I think they're of a similar sort of standard. 𝘮𝘀, maybe he's better in the air, and I think the dribbling might be a little bit smoother, but there's really not much of a difference. And Forlan's a brilliant option for linking into the Liga as well.
Yeah, he does actually have decent defensive stats, like not obviously excellent, but solid enough, and he's high. And I was actually going to ask, I mean, it's something that we haven't talked about too much on the pod, but I know other people sometimes say that they don't really like high attackers or strikers. Have you actually noticed that making much of a difference at all?
The only time I notice it is if I use someone who's like high, low, high, medium. So yeah, you can notice the difference, but I don't think it's as bad as people say it is. I like to use my striker a lot in the build-up. I think he's one of my more important players for the way I play, passing with the ball with him, trying to take it on the turn, holding a player off. So I think having him drop back naturally is, not too bad. But I think this year, instructions can outweigh work rates slightly, not so much in the centre mid position. But as a striker, if you put sort of stay forward, get in behind, they will mostly do that. They'll always be on the last man. They're not going to be dropping too deep. So I think, I mean, it depends for every player. I think if you're someone who likes to play with your striker on the last man, making runs in behind all the time, he's not always going to be there to offer it. I think that there's other benefits that having a high striker sort of entail.
I agree. I actually got pretty lucky over the weekend. I saved quite a few packs actually, including an 84x5 for a road to the final, and got Gabriel Martinelli in that pack, which was really fortunate. And used him in champs, and unsurprisingly, very, very good. But he's also high. And to be honest, because he also has pretty decent-ish defensive stats, like 60 defensive awareness, 67 standing tackle, and 85 aggression, which Japes, I'm sure, will like. I put a marksman on him, so he's 85 strength, and found him very effective at kind of pressing from the front. And he's an interesting one because he's very kind of nimble. He feels really, really good on the ball. Marksman giving him 99 ball control and dribbling. He's got 94 agility. But because he's got that big strength boost up to 85, he is controlled. So he runs in behind really effectively because he doesn't have that initial boost of acceleration. It's like a continuous boost of acceleration. And he has that kind of nimbleness that you'd associate with a smaller player. And he's 5'10", which I think is kind of at the upper end of the small, shifty kind of player height, I would say. So he feels really, really good. He seems to shoot really well. I think with Marksman, the only downside is his long passing, because it's 60 without a boost, which is kind of low. But he is very good at short passing with 85, short passing and 88 vision. But I would kind of wonder whether he's worth the 800k. It's also one of those things where there are quite a lot of good teams in the Europa League. And I realize people may be thinking, has he got an upgrade already? Should he be getting an upgrade? And Josh, this is something that I think we spoke briefly about on Twitter, but there's some ambiguity over whether cards like Martinelli, who have already gone through into the round of 16, but didn't play a game to do that, would get an upgrade. But my view is that they probably will, looking at the tracker on the website.
Yeah, it seems as though it's kind of a slight oversight in terms of the way that they've done it. Obviously, with the Champions League not having... There's like an extra round in the Europa League and Conference League. And in order to compensate for that, the Champions League has this... if you win your next knockout round game, then you get the first upgrade. But in the Europa League and in the Conference League, it says qualify for the round of 16. Well, if you won your group, you qualified for the round of 16. And on EA's own tracker, they have 5 upgrades available for those teams. So the two that spring to mind are Arsenal and Betis. I'm sure there's far more. And for somebody, say, like the left back, is it Miranda? There are so many special left backs that we've had at Betis over the last 2 years. I don't never know which one it is, and they seem to all begin with M as well. Anyway, I think it is Miranda. He's 86 rated, but he was well under 40k last time I checked, and the fodder price of 88 is 42 or 43k. Yeah. So it was like, if he's guaranteed that upgrade, I would just put my entire club into a special Spanish left back. I don't know. It's one of those oddities that I hope there's a bit of clarification on, but by their own tracker, they should all be getting an automatic upgrade. So that'd be a 91 Martinelli.
Yeah, definitely be taking that. And the other thing people may not have picked up on is the 85 and 86 rated road to the final players. It looks like they're going up 2 ratings, right?
Yeah, if it's an inform upgrade, which is the way that their tracker looks, then that would put them up by 2. So 86s go to 88s, and then 87s also go to 88s, and it's a +1 from there up. So anybody that's below 86 should be getting a decent bump.
Yeah, it's good to know. And actually, talking of players to review, I know you said you wanted to do 𝘘𝘃𝗿𝘀𝘀, but he's expired. But I would like to ask you about him anyway. A few people have said that I've not got on with him for whatever reason, and I was just interested to know, in terms of chemistry style, what you've gone for.
It's interesting. In this past week, I've gone from playing old gen because I found it way more consistent, and if we're being brutally honest, easier. The level of opponents just isn't as good as it is on new gen. But I was kind of like, I have to force myself. Like, I did it for the first few months of the year. I have to go back to it. And I had an engine on him when I was playing on old gen, and he was brilliant. And I switched him to marksman, and I noticed no difference in the pace whatsoever because, as you say, like, I've not really been in the lengthy world for a few months, and going back to it, I kind of had those flashbacks to early days when it was like, oh my God, like slow players can really keep up. He's been an awful lot of fun, and I like him with marksman. My only problem is that his balance is quite low with the marksman, and I feel like it does need a boost, which was something that the engine kind of gave him. So if you did him and aren't using him, like, get to using him because he's an awful lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a shame that version wasn't the 5-star 𝘃𝑚 version because I would have done him for sure. But I wanted to move us on to what we're going to do next, and that's to basically run through our teams and I guess what setup we have them in. It's something that people always ask, but it's actually quite time consuming. So adding it into a podcast can take up quite a lot of that podcast. So I thought we'd go through it here as we've got Josh here, we've got Japes and myself and a brand new guest, which makes for an interesting twist. Josh, we'll start with you as you've already given us, I guess, one player that's in your team, although you do run a couple of different accounts actually, don't you?
Yeah, so I've run 3 separate accounts this year. And like I did one where I kind of wanted to go from scratch going up to team of the year. That went well. I didn't pack any. I've got like the one that I played the beginning of the game on, and then I've got my main account that's had a few FIFA points on it, just so that I've been able to kind of review players and all of that kind of stuff. And so the main account that I like playing is my Road to Glory. So it's kind of a mix between new cards and old cards that were very good at the time. I've gone down this Serie A route. I packed Brolin's base hero card like early on in the game cycle, and then through one of the World Cup upgrades got his striker version and have just loved him. He's been one of my like favorite players this year. And I think his base version had something like 300 goal contributions in 250 games for me, from striker, left wing, right wing, like all over the place. That Path to Glory Griezmann that I wasn't super excited about when I packed him on the pod, I should have been a lot more excited, and he is like everything you'd want him to be. It's interesting that the power curve has shifted a little bit with Team of the Year, but I'm somebody who I'm not pushing myself to be the best FIFA player I can possibly be. I'm sitting in Div 5 and I'm very happy there. I will like win 2, lose 2, win 2, lose 2. That's my, like, when I say lose 2, I'm giving 2 wins away because I don't want to progress any higher. I want to be able to just sit and have fun where I am. And it's interesting, once I get into champs, as soon as I'm in that kind of +7, +8 elo range, I feel my team is beginning to fall a little bit behind because I'm not actively kind of going out to get 𝘭𝘆𝑚bappés and the best players in the game. Like, my back line consists of informed Theo Hernandez from well early in the game cycle, informed Tomori, not the Winter Wildcards version, from well early in the game cycle. And then I've got Team of the Year nominations, Mainan in net. Obviously, Charles that we spoke about on one side, and I'm still with the out of position Chiesa. I feel like he was a really underutilized card when he first came out, and he's got a new card, I think, for the Europa League version, and it looks superb. Now, it can only play left wing, which means it wouldn't fit in my team because 𝘊𝘃𝗲𝗄. I've got the striker version, but I'm playing him at left wing because he can position change over there. If he gets a couple of upgrades, which he should do, but I mean, Juve struggled a little bit against Nantes in the first game. He'll be an outrageous card, and I may have to force myself to make coins to pick him up at some point. And then my middle two is World Cup Vieira and the 96 Zidane, so prime Zidane, who I got out of a icon pack during Team of the Year. And I play Vieira on drop between defenders in like a 4-4-2 or 4-2-4, depending on how I'm wanting to play. And I have both my wing backs, which is mid Zambrotta and Theo Hernandez, bombing on overlapping. So they're not really getting involved in the build-up play in the middle. They're more to kind of like give me an option out wide. Especially with 𝘃𝗲𝗄 up front now. If you can get a ball anywhere near his head, he is slamming it home. And then I've got World Cup icon Bobby Moore at centre-back. I thought he was underpriced when he was released. He was like just over 100k. And he just got more and more underpriced as kind of time went on. The more I use him, I don't understand where he is. It might be because he's got 80 pace on his card, but he's just been like, compared to Tomori, who can't really pass, Moore is unbelievable to use. He's so nice. So as kind of a fun team, I've got a drip of 5-star in there in Zidane and Griezmann. I've got some sort of pacey players. I've got a bit of the bulk that I like, and I play a slightly odd style. It's absolutely a fun team that I think if you play the game even semi-seriously is quite easy to put together. You know, you'd be able to put something similar together fairly quickly.
Not crazy OP or meta or anything like that. And we can move on to Japes' squad, which I think is probably going to be fairly similar. I feel like you've kept us somewhat up to date with the comings and goings. Do you want to just take us through yours? Maybe let us know if players are off chem, but what we want to know is how it plays in game, I guess.
All of my players start on 3 chem, which is great. And my team is like untradeable except for 2 players. And those 2 players I have a really hard time selling, which is why I still don't have that future stars Musiala, which is starting to drive me insane a little bit. So, actually, Gold Neuer is also tradable. So I use Neuer. For me, he's been the best keeper that I've used, but also I'm pretty biased. So when he makes a save, I'm like, you're amazing. And when he doesn't make a save, I'm like, it's all right, you'll get him next time. You know, it's like, it's totally one of those things we do to our players. My left back is baby Roberto Carlos from an Icon SBC. My center backs are World Cup Blanc, who I packed untradeable, and then World Cup Vieira, who I obviously took from swaps. And my right back, I use 𝘵𝗫𝗍𝗍, who I think I would prefer to replace. Right now, I don't have the coins for it, but the Roberto Carlos is still good, but I'm sort of feeling like I would like to move up in that position. And I keep having my eye on that Future Stars 𝘭𝑪𝘂𝗍 card to play as a stay back left back and flip my formation around and see how that feels. So it would cause like a ripple effect in the team though, and I don't think I'm quite there yet. But
yeah, because I'm guessing you'd have to bring in a player from Red Bull or something, or Croatian manager maybe would help. But
yeah, I think a Croatian manager. I use a lot of Bundesliga players, so it might be okay. But my midfield ends up being my holding midfielder is World Cup Schweinsteiger. My box-to-box midfielder is one of my tradable cards, which is winter wildcard Joshua Kimmich.
Yeah,
who's a baller.
A more expensive baller now too, right?
And I absolutely love. Actually, what's his price now? Oh my gosh, he's 900k now. So I picked up Kimmich when he was like 550 or something like that. Oof. So that one's turned out to be good for me, I guess. And then my more attacking midfielder that I would love to replace with Musiala is Dirk Kuyt's World Cup hero card, who I got in, I think, my pre-order pack. And then my front line, my left wing is World Cup Q, who was one of the upgrades or, roll the dice World Cup hero cards. My striker is World Cup Voller, who is also tradable, but I have a hard time saying goodbye to him because he's just like so fun. Forlan would be a card that I would consider rotating into tryout though. I don't know. And then I use World Cup icon Stoichkov as my right wing, who I was I kept trying to replace, but he keeps like getting back into the squad. And now I've just sort of like accepted the fact that he's much better than I want him to be. And I just need to like lean into his strengths. And that's been good for me. So that's the squad.
Nice.
A lot of untradables. My bench is full of some good untradeable cards too. I've got like base hero Forlan, who I bring on sometimes, the 𝘵𝑚𝑖 𝘵𝘃𝗍, flashback 𝘬𝘬𝘦, World Cup 𝘧𝘧, and Path to Glory 𝘬𝘯𝘂𝘀. I was really counting on Brazil to give me that 5-star. I mean, I'm happy that Messi
5-star
won
weak
it.
foot would have just been so good. Yeah.
Yeah, that 𝘬𝘯𝘂𝘀 card is underappreciated now. But with those like boosted stats, that card would have been absolutely silly in the midfield. So
yeah,
I don't know. I'm just trying to get Musiala in, and I've got 1.1 million coins, Ben. And I expected him to go down to like 1.2, and I could buy him.
Yeah,
he's just like sticking at 1.5, 1.6. I think it's because they gave him 5-star skills. 𝘵𝘵𝘬𝘬𝘦.
Yeah, probably is. Makes a huge difference to players' prices, actually. Let us move on to Springford, chat about your team. It's going to be interesting as a non-pro, non-content creator, how your team's looking. And also might be good to get some context in terms of, where you finish in champs, how much you play, that sort of thing.
I think it's good to preface this with I play FIFA a lot. If I'm honest, I don't like looking at the PlayStation wrap up every year because it reminds me how much I play it. But I think it is about 300 hours plus each year. And that would be calendar year because it's a PlayStation wrap up. But I've been playing since FIFA 11, FIFA 12. We used to play PES back in the early years and then moved on to FIFA. So I do put a lot of time into FIFA. I have gradually improved my results. I think back in the 30-game weekend league format, I used to get around 14 wins. It switched to 20 last year, and now I've been getting 14 wins pretty consistently. I think the last 2 weeks I've gotten 16 win finishes, and I've usually in elite rivals, but I don't like pushing myself up there too much too quickly because it gets a bit horrible having to go in there every week and try and get your wins. My squad is looking a lot better after Team of the Year than it was before. I like to recycle, sort of set myself a theme, not a theme in terms of really restrictive, but I like to say, okay, this year I'm going to use Serie A players and then I'll have Serie A kits, or for example, FIFA 23 this cycle, I want to try and keep it La Liga as much as I can. So with that in mind, at the moment, I'm running a La Liga, Pass La Liga hybrid with whatever good untradables I've got as well, because I think it's not worth limiting yourself to the point where you don't get to, use players that you enjoy as well. So I play a 4-3-3-2 from Japes Tactics, which are brilliant. I could talk about it another time if you'd like, but yeah.
Can you quickly, before you get into that, how does it feel playing on such low width then?
A lot better than it used to. I think the low width is what works for me, because otherwise they're too wide out. I don't skill. I'm not a skiller, so I always have to rely on the passing side. So if I get two players isolated out wide, I find that it doesn't really work for me attacking. So when the width is this low, it feels more like they're forwards, and then you've got the wing backs overlapping anyway. So that gives you all the width you need.
And actually, just sorry, quickly on that, have you played the 4-3-2-1? And I think the thing that I always struggle with is the difference between the two. Like, what do you feel like is the advantage of playing a regular 4-3-3 versus a 4-3-2-1?
Yeah, so I think actually the last 2 weekends league I've played, because I did Who's 4-3-2-1 and got a 16 win with that, and then I did Japes' 4-3-3-2 and got a 16 win with that.
There's no difference.
I'm leaning. There's no difference. It's the way it plays slightly. I feel like the 4-3-2-1 does get too congested in the middle, and then you find yourself only looking for that fullback outlet. Whereas with the width in the 4-3-3, the wingers are sitting more on the shoulder of the opponent's fullbacks, so you can slip in a through ball to them really easily. And I think there's a bit more of a clear gap for the attacking centre mid to run into. He gets a bit more space than he does in the 4-3-2-1. And I also find that because a lot of people are playing 4-3-2-1 at the moment, at least in the higher divisions they are. And having that 4-3-3 almost counters it, because you've got the midfielder sitting deep naturally anyway, because he's a CDM. And then you've got the wide players that are sticking wider. So it's like you're congesting where they want to play while also having your own width to it. So I think that the 4-3-3-2 works slightly better in terms of countering that, and it sort of applies to most other formations as well.
Yeah, and people should check out that 4-3-3 brackets 2 formation from Japes, which is in one of his newsletters. I think it was number 16 or 17, something like that. But yeah, Springford, who have you got in the various different positions then?
So I've got, and this is going to make it sound like, okay, is it the team or is it the player? Because I've got left back, the World Cup 𝘃𝗲𝗍𝘀, who I got when he came out in a player pick. And you know, when you pack like a 250k left back, and then he turns into an 850k left back, and you think, oh, this is
you know what? I actually don't, because that doesn't really happen. It's a really funny thing, isn't it? Like that happened this year. So he was 250k when he came out, and now he's what, 800? Is he 900 now?
He might be. He just seems to keep going up. I mean, I think if I could sell him, maybe, but then there's not much better left backs, at least defensively. I mean, you've got the team of the year Theo, but I mean, I use him to stay back as like the more defensive fullback anyway, so he works perfectly for that. Centre back, I've got team of the year Van Dijk. I saved a lot of packs in during team of the year. Used Josh's spreadsheet for that, which was brilliant. Just to sort of give me a sort of comparison of what I actually had. I got team of the year Van Dijk. I've got the flashback Ramos at centre back. Fits into the sort of my Madrid, the La Liga thing. Donnarumma to give him some chemistry in goal. At right back, the attacking fullback, I've got the Centurions Lucas Vázquez, who is a lot of fun going forward. He's surprisingly good defensively, but also going forward, he feels like having another midfielder there. Right centre mid, so the slightly more defensive centre mid, I've got the headline team of the year honourable mentions Valverde. At CDM, I've got prime Matthäus that I got from one of the icon upgrades, the 89 plus one. Do you know what? I actually, this pack luck is going to sound ridiculous. I got team of the year 𝘃𝗲𝗍𝘀 opening my saved packs, and he's now on the bench, even though he's brilliant, because then out pops Matthäus.
And you'd say he's definitely better prime Lothar than 𝘃𝗃𝗍𝗀, or I mean, surely
he's less well-rounded. I'd say 𝘃𝗃𝗍𝗀 is really, really good, and that Kante kind of type. The work rates help as well, but I mean, if you get a prime Matthäus, you can't really not have him in the squad as well. So it was a bit of a richer situation.
Are you using the deep line playmaker instruction?
Yes, yeah, I've got that on him, so he's nice for that. He shows himself available.
Yeah, I swear, I don't know if this is like true or not, but my belief is that position, having a CDM that has high attacking positioning in that, or like above 85 attacking positioning in that spot with the deep lying playmaker instruction makes a difference. I would imagine that Matthäus has he's probably close to 90, and 𝘃𝗃𝗍𝗀's probably not even above 70.
Yeah, Matthäus, I've got it up in front of me. Matthäus is 89 and 𝘃𝗃𝗍𝗀 is 62. Yeah. And because you're right, because he does show himself a lot more in better positions without getting too far forward as well.
I wonder if that's why I like that 88 𝗏𝗏 so much. I've been using him quite a bit. The progressions future stars one that's still available, I think, for the next 3 weeks in objectives.
Wait. So what you're saying is you could have reviewed an active objective player, but you tried to review a player that expired.
But he's not in my main team, and I knew we were leading in. I wanted to, have the link through. I could put
nice
him
recovery.
in there.
Thinking about the structure of the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, he has 91 positioning and 91 defensive awareness, so he's kind of got both sides of it. Nice, he also has 99 shot power, and his long shots are the best in the game. There's no one who matches him. It's unbelievable when you hit power shots.
Not even Mr. Chong?
No one.
Nice. And actually, who else completes the midfield then? I think that's how far you got through.
So left centre mid is Zidane, the 94 SBC version, who, if I'm being brutally honest, he's okay. He's definitely a luxury player. He's in there because I can put him in the white Real Madrid kit, but he's... I had 𝘵𝗵𝗽𝗀𝘀 in that position before, and I'm leaning towards saying he was more impactful. But it's always nice to have Zidane in your squad as well.
It's the medium.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in work rates this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, a quick pause to say, I've seen so many people say this as well. I think medium. Funnily enough, 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗀 is medium, Josh, so maybe disagree with this. But a lot of people, and I do agree, have been saying how basically a medium player in midfield does feel like having almost like half a player, essentially, because they don't, I guess they don't work as hard in either direction, so you can be a disadvantage. I don't know, would anyone kind of massively disagree with that? I personally feel it seems to be true, but
I think it depends how you use your midfield, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
When you've got like a high, medium, high player, I almost call them like pick up and play players. Like the best example of that is like 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏. You can put him into any team with his high height and he's always going to make himself available and he's always going to be there for selection. He's always making the runs. Whereas when you've got a medium, if you're like a really good player, it doesn't matter too much. You can trigger the runs. You can use Zidane's 5-star skills or anything like that. But it's almost like you just pick up these high, medium, high players, put them into your squad and they will do a job for you and they will always make themselves available. But the medium, you have to work for it more to get them involved.
I use that the path to glory Griezmann, and I could not get on with him, and it's just because I'm 90%, and I've loved Griezmann in every iteration of FIFA, and I just this year the like medium work rates, he just felt like such a bum. I tried him out wide, and he felt lazy, and I think if I'd used him as like in a 2-striker set or as an attacking mid and whatever variant you want to use that has an attacking mid, he would have been fine. But for the way I play, he was just such a bomb.
And I think that's what I was meaning by like how you use your midfield. I think it's the same with strikers. Like I've been pretty vehemently like 4-4-2 this year. Like I always go back to it. I find it, or even 4-2-4. And so him in a 2-striker, I have him more as kind of like a playmaker because he's been alongside, Brolin, for example, before I got this 𝘃𝗲𝗏𝘀𝘀 who now goes up front, who can also pass. I've needed Griezmann as a sort of player that I can just get the ball into, 5-star skill move to create a bit of space, whatever that may be, and then release the pass to kind of get the rest of the attack going. I don't need him to be sort of super active. And I feel like it's if in a single strike formation, you have to have high attacking work rate for sure. And I also think it's quite important on the wings. I don't know. I feel like the quality of player can affect how you feel about their work rates, essentially. Like there are players that, even that 94 Zidane, I used that 94 Zidane and I didn't like him at all. The 96 Zidane, I just have a totally different feel for. And he doesn't play in the same sort of lazy way in midfield. And I can't put my finger on what that is. And it might just be a kind of confirmation bias. But yeah, it feels like work rates have got more important this year than previously. I feel like instructions used to be able to kind of override them a little bit, but it does feel important. I think maybe midfield, because I have one midfielder on drop back between defenders and one that's just kind of floating that needs to be a kind of out ball, but a pass back rather than a pass forward. Maybe I don't feel it as much.
One thing I would say is it's important to remember, and we talked about this on the podcast before, what work rates actually do, because people think about them like instructions, but actually you have to think about instructions as being a fence around the area the player is likely to operate in. And you have to think of work rates as how hard they work in that area on the defensive and offensive phases, which does make, if you think about it, quite a big difference. How intensely that player works in the attacking phase and defensive phase is going to be a big factor in terms of how that player plays. For some players, it makes less of a difference. I think like centre-backs, the work rates do matter to an extent, but really not so much. And that is partly because they're already positioned in that area. But you can tell with midfielders, because their positioning is a bit more freeform, often defensively, that high defensive work rate, for example, does make them more intensely involved, which helps quite a bit. And I think particularly in a 3-man midfield where that responsibility can kind of be passed around to some extent, it can cause you issues, basically. Actually, Springford, just finish off the team then. You've got Forlan up front and then there are 2 others, I guess?
Yeah, so Forlan plays left wing for chemistry, but he's actually the striker in game. Right wing is the prime Luis Figo, who I bought in because that's a position I could sort of change who I want without too much impact on the chemistry. And again, I thought just put him in Madrid kit would be quite nice. And then at striker, but he actually plays the free roam left wing, is 𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, who I again very luckily got from an 89 plus icon pack. So yeah, that's the team, and probably why I get some of the wins where I maybe shouldn't do.
Yeah, it's a good team. But have you got lucky in those packs? Well, I mean, that is going to be lucky however many you've done, but how many have you done of those like icon gambles?
To be fair, I've done a lot of. I think I've done all the icon packs this year.
Wow.
And
okay, that makes more sense then.
Yeah, no, but they've been terrible. As in, like previously, I haven't got anyone. I think my first icon was 𝘬𝘚𝗶𝗹𝗃 or 𝘵𝘚𝗶𝗃, and then my next one was like 𝘬𝘯𝘬𝘦 Sar, which is, while he's good, it's again another goalkeeper. After that, it's been no one of note. I think I've got I did the World Cup icon player pick with my icon swaps tokens, and the best I got was the World Cup icon 𝘵𝘰𝗱𝘀𝘬. I've got him twice. I've got 𝘦𝘚𝑚𝑡�ORRES twice, and then my last two icon packs, which would be the 89 plus, I've got 𝘬𝑃ELE followed by 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘀. So yeah, it's been a real turnaround in the luck recently.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I've had a similar thing with that Martinelli, and also actually in the prime player pick, which I did for 27 tokens, I ended up committing to that actually more than I thought. And I got Pirlo, which is all right, actually kind of fun player to get, prime Pirlo, and Beckham, the prime, well, they're all primes, and Maldini, who is someone that people may know I have a bit of an agenda against, so I'll have to see whether that changes. And as a result, I'm in the process of kind of changing up my team, and so it's probably not the best time to go through it. We also want to cover a few more gameplay things before finishing, so I'll probably share that and a tactic that I've been very much enjoying, but has also been really good in terms of results on next week's episode, which would be a supporter one. So if you fancy joining, then please do. You can head over, just search Support FUT Weekly, and you'll find the Patreon, and you can support there, just £3 a month. A huge thank you, as always, if you're already supporting. So we'll move on to this question from Alex, and this will be good considering what Josh was saying earlier. Does anyone have any experience, pointers, heads up about switching from old gen to new gen this FIFA? I haven't paid any attention to lengthy, etc.
Yeah, I mean, being aware of the different accelerate types is absolutely important. I found players on new gen, especially if they've got a lengthy attacker, do tend to sprint a little more because, and do tend to try and get that just burst of pace around the outside that you can get. I wouldn't kind of worry about it too much. I think the biggest thing I've found is that you almost have to be a little bit more patient with the game, because it's not, I feel like on PS4, if you tell it to do something, like 98 times out of 100, it will just do it. It will, like, if you want to turn, it will do it. Because of the hypermotion technology that you get on new gen, I do find that you can get these extra animations that you're not used to. Things can take a little bit longer. The ball can get stuck under people's feet a little bit more. So, like, being wary of that, especially when you're in tight areas defensively, is massive. And double tapped passing is far more effective on new gen than it is on old gen. Like, putting the ball near a defender, but with that double tap to get that kind of bounce on it, they tend to not intercept it on new gen. Whereas on old gen, I felt like it was kind of a 50-50. So they'd be kind of like the few things to look at. But in essence, it's still football. And if you kind of are playing with a sort of sound tactic and you're doing all the right things, then you're going to still get decent results. There are a few aspects of the game that you have to be patient with and kind of relearn the length of time, that kind of almost that shot clock in your head that's counting down when you receive a ball to when it needs to be released. Try and bring that down a little bit, because it's going to take you slightly longer in certain situations to execute a pass or a turn. There is one thing as well that I only attempted on new gen, and it's because I saw Japes do it in his newsletter in P2P Snacks, which is the RBX or RB square pass from the keeper. The driven kick from the hands is wild on new gen compared to old gen. Wild.
It's super fun.
It is. When you just spring a single attack with one kick, you're like, what do I need midfielders for? Like, I don't care if they're medium.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you do have three attackers, or like if you're playing a wide formation and your opponent's pushing their fullback forward, especially like you play one of those little 4-3-2-1 I don't know, opponents. I was going to say something.
Something rodent related.
Exactly. But if you play one of those and they've sent their fullback forward and you collect it with your keeper, if you get a little bit of space, you can have the pass at your winger's feet in like half a second. It feels like it takes like no time, especially if you have a keeper like Manuel Neuer, who's fantastic at kicking the ball.
Yeah. And actually, I thought you were going to say driven passes from goal kicks, like just regular ground passes, because I think some people don't realize you can do that. Same from free kicks as well, which can just be better if your opponent's trying to catch you out. So yeah, look out for that. So finally, just to wrap up the pod, Springford, as you're on, and we haven't really talked kind of specific gameplay advice. I guess we have, but maybe not in our traditional kind of gameplay question style way we normally do it. Is there a particular question we've had in that you kind of want to mention, want to cover, or any particular tip really that you have that you might want to share?
Yeah, so I've got a tip and a question that I can answer both pretty quickly, if that helps. The tip is, whatever formation, whatever tactic you're playing, put the width down to 1 and just see if it changes your game. Because if you're using wide players, it doesn't really make sense. But for some reason, when you put it down into 1, they still stay as wide as you need them to be. So just give that a go. I find it works well on narrow formations as well. I mean, I don't play narrow formations that much, but it's one of those things where rather than starting at like 50 and then going down, I recommend that you start at 1 and work your way up. I don't think I've played anything higher than 15, 20 width for like the last couple of weeks, really. And it's been working fine for me. And the gameplay question, it came in from Flintron. He asks, are there any tips for knockdown headers? So I believe by this he means if you're in a situation where you're 2-on-1 with the goalkeeper, but it's been crossed in, well, what do you do there? And it's one of those things where it's very, I'd almost say it's not realistic in the way you have to think about it. So if you're crossing the ball into somebody and you've got a player open, just try and make that, just hold X and put it towards them, because headers are very assisted and work most of the time. Scoring headers, not so much, which I think is why it's actually better to pass it for the knockdown chance. But if you're in a situation where you're not guaranteed that headed goal, that volleyed goal, just look for a pass. And a lot of the time, look backwards for the pass as well, almost to a runner outside the box. Because, and this is why I say it's unrealistic, is that in a real footballing situation, the player is never going to take as good of a touch as your receiving player will in that situation. They'll always take a ridiculous touch and you can score, or you can have the first time shot. So in a situation where you're not guaranteed to score the header, just look for a pass off that, because a lot of the time it's going to be assisted and it's going to find someone in a better position that you were originally in.
Yeah, that's a really good bit of advice. I think that is a good spot to end it on as well. Springford, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your thoughts, sharing your team, and all that good stuff. It was good of you.
No, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope to be back soon at some point if you'll have me.
Yeah, of course. And actually, we should say, if people want more from you, any social media or anything like that to plug? Or
just around the Discord. Always happy to answer any messages. You can find me on there.
Nice.
Just come and say hello. And also a plug for the Discord. If you haven't joined, it's absolutely brilliant on there. I've become a much better player from joining. And it's just really good to be part of a footballing and FIFA community that's so friendly and so welcoming.
Yeah, always nice to have a plug for that. And if you would like to jump in there and you're already a gold or above supporter, then do go to bit.ly/pod Discord help. And if you fancy supporting, then of course, please do. £3 a month for the bonus podcast. And you can look at all the options over on Patreon. Just search Support FUT Weekly. Great to get those bonus episodes, including this week's content pod, which will be out around the time that you're listening to this podcast, probably, because it's going to be out later in the week after the Champions League matches, focusing, of course, on road to the final. So yeah, just search Support FUT Weekly. And of course, hugely appreciate all those who are supporting. Right, Japes, we should say goodbye to you, but when are you saying hello to Musiala? That's the question.
Well, I mean, I could make it happen here. Maybe it's I just have a hard time moving on from 𝘮𝘰. But if I were to sell 𝘮𝘰 and get, say, Forlan, for instance, then I could get him.
Could you do it if you went from Völler to Müller?
No, I could definitely do it if I went down to Müller. I think I'm only like a couple 100,000 coins off. But do I really want to sell 𝘮𝘰? Or should I just eat it and sell Joshua Kimmich? But Kimmich's kind of nice because he starts as like right back default and then move him into the midfield.
Well, find out next time on
That's right.
this podcast or Japes newsletter, which you can find.
You can find it at p2psnacks.substack.com.
Nice, thank you. And thank you very much to Josh. It's been great to have an appearance from you on the Gameplay Pod.
Yes, it's been good to be here. Nice to feel a bit more comfortable with Springford here. I feel like, we're not the rank 1 players and, strength in numbers and all that.
Yeah, indeed. And actually, talking of strength in numbers, I feel like I've done a lot of plugs this episode. But if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, then do leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe. It really helps. At least that's what all the YouTubers say, so I'm assuming it does. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast, and a big thank you to all those supporters keeping the podcast going, including those icon patrons: Dave B, 𝘬𝘰𝘬𝘦, Coach 𝘵𝑎𝑐𝑒, DJ FIFA Player, Alan G, Alistair, Anthony R, Dominic P, Rob P, Jeff B, Stephen F, Tom B, Damon H, David S, Nick Jack M, Eric T, Neil P, Adam G, Dan W, Waterman, Jake G, Roger D, Springford, Elec, Bracco, Nishant, Harry P, Alex M, Lee A, Brendan W, Andrew C, Joe W, Timothy J, Dylan, Adam R, Sam K, Graham W, Andy, Ads H2K, and Brian V. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, 𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘀, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add, though. FIFA's a bit like life, really. It has its many ups and its many downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.